Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at AR-15 mil-spec triggers and what you can do with simple household items to smooth them out a little bit so you can better hit your target at longer distances or just have a better feeling trigger.
Just start. All finished.
Quick finishing pass, not too bad, and I'll probably do that.
Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. He's safe and have fun on the range.
So we have two different AR-15s on the table here, and I know this is kind of a silly exercise because you guys can't really feel the difference in these two triggers. One is just a normal mil-spec Bushmaster trigger, and this one up here is a Palmetto State Armory EPT trigger, which basically means that they have a nickel finish on the trigger. These are both single stage triggers, so let me show you the Bushmaster first. These are both unloaded, and let's get this a little closer to the camera, and you can see got just a little bit of creep, and it is kind of catchy. It doesn't feel bad, but it's definitely not a Geisley. It's definitely not a super high-speed, low-drag trigger. And here's the Palmetto State EPT trigger, which honestly isn't all that bad of a trigger. You can see there's just a little bit of creep as well. And so what we're going to do here is we're not going to get rid of that creep necessarily. We're looking to polish the surfaces of these triggers. Now, here's a disclaimer. Do not do this if you don't know what you're doing. Always take your work to a proper gunsmith that knows what he's doing. But I will show you how to polish these triggers. Now, it is extremely important to remember, we don't want to change the level of metal. We just want to change the surface finish to make it a nicer, smoother pull of the trigger. We're not going to change the weight of the pull because we're not changing out the springs in either of these. First up, we have the Bushmaster Firearms trigger. And this has not even been shot yet, but you can see the grinding lines. You can see they're vertical up and down right there, if I get it just right in the light. And you can see where the hammer contacts that rectangular pattern. And on the hammer, you can also see those little grinding marks as well. If I focus, there we go. You can see those little grinding marks. So this is how the trigger and the hammer interface one another. And when you pull the trigger, the hammer is allowed to go forward once this ledge is clear of the hammer. So let's go get some stuff, and we were going to smooth this out and polish it up. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. I'm just going to show you the way I do it. Also, it's important to get a little bit of dark cutting fluid with a high sulfur content. This is some rigid dark cutting fluid. You can find this at Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards. You can get it on Amazon. And the reason I use this is because of the high sulfur content. It actually helps you cut the metal. It's not like you can use 0W30, 0W20, 530, any kind of engine oil, because that will just lubricate the surfaces and not get what you want. The sandpaper I'm going to be using is 1500. You can pick this up at any auto body shop. And I'm also going to be using a Dremel with some jeweler's brush. Again, you don't need a Dremel to do this. You can do this by hand. Some people use an Arkansas stone, a triangular stone like this. This trigger really isn't in need of any kind of stoning, and like I mentioned before, we really don't want to change the level of metal. We just want to change the surface finish of it. So I'm going to cut a little piece of 1500 grit sandpaper and get a little bit of oil on there. A little bit on the front, just a little bit. There we go. A little bit on the front, a little bit on the back. And I am going to use this stone as a guide. You don't need to do it like this, but this is the way I do it. We're just going to grab the face of the trigger. We're just going to lightly sand it, and it's kind of important to have something nice and flat behind your sandpaper. You can just put your finger there, but then you're going to get a concave surface because of the contour of your finger. We're just going to work that just a little bit. Remember, with things like this, with operations like this, less is always more. So we're not putting a ton of pressure on the sandpaper, and we're just going a little bit, and we're going to check it often. And we can still see those lines. They're even a little bit more pronounced now that we're starting to polish the high sides. So let's do this a little bit longer until we get a nice uniform finish across the left to right. Another quick tip is you can get a nice piece of flat stock, a piece of tile, piece of granite, put a little bit of oil on it, put your sandpaper on there, and then when you're moving the trigger across it, the face of the trigger, remember to do it in a figure-8 pattern. This will help you not just cut into one side of it. The figure-8 pattern will help you do a more uniform job of sanding the trigger. Just like that. So here's the finish now. Here's what it looks like. You can see just a shadow of those grind marks right in the center. We're going to see if we can get rid of those. And here's getting in there with the stone. It's a little easier to keep everything centered up and flat. Again, try to do that figure-8 motion if you can until that face is nice and shiny. So here's what the surface finish looks like now. Now we can grab the Dremel and some jeweler's brush and shine it up even more. Okay, so like I said, there's multiple ways of doing this. I just use a Dremel and one of these buffing wheels, very small buffing wheels. Get a little bit of jeweler's brush, the brown stuff. You can also use chrome polish. It's the same stuff, it just comes in more of a paste. You just basically turn this on, get a little bit of jeweler's brush on there. Low speed is fine, don't go too fast. And obviously, you're going to want to be polishing away from that surface so you don't cut up your brush. And you don't want to put a lot of pressure on there, just a little bit, just light pressure, going back and forth. And remember, less is always more in these operations. I know I've said that, but it's very true. You can always go back and do more if you need to. But if you go too far, then it's too late. Let's take a look at that. Get some of that jeweler's brush off there. It's basically kind of a sticky, waxy type substance with a little bit of buffing compound. Well, that's basically what it is buffing compound. And you can see it's more of a mirror finish. And I'll do it 2 or 3 more times and we'll take a look at it, and then we'll also do it to the hammer. Now the hammer's a little more difficult to do it to. You're gonna have to kind of come in at an angle. It's not as easy as the trigger, as you can see. You don't want to go too crazy. Right now I'm at 10,000 RPMs. Clean all the gunk out of there. There's that mirror finish. We'll probably have to do that once or twice to actually get in there a little bit more. But you get the idea. Let me hit this once or twice more, and then we'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so here's what the trigger looks like after polishing. And here's what the hammer side looks like after polishing. And so that's the Bushmaster. We'll put that together in a little bit just to give you guys a look at the Palmetto State, which has had a couple hundred rounds put through it. Here's what the trigger surface looks like. Looks kind of icky. And here's what the hammer surface looks like. And that's, oh, let's get that to focus. That looks even a little chunkier. So let's polish these up and see what we get. Okay, just got the Palmetto State one done. This one is a little rougher, but since we're doing this for time, Just want to show you what it looks like. So I got that mirror finish, and here's the hammer. Same mirror finish. So let's get these back into the perspective firearms, and then, like I said, you can't exactly feel it, but maybe you can see it or hear it, a little bit of a difference. We'll heat these surfaces up just a little bit with a hairdryer and put a little bit of like a synthetic oil on there so it can get into the pores, and install them and see what they look like. All right, we got the triggers back in these AR-15s. Let's check them out. Obviously, they're both unloaded. Let's see if we can get a close-up on that trigger. We'll try the creep. Ooh, see how that snaps back really fast? Oh, nice break. Let's just try the break again. Real smooth. I can notice a huge difference. You guys can rewind the video back to the beginning when we were messing with these when they were stock, and you'd notice that they'd hang up a little bit in between, and they bounce back immediately now with that nice polished surface. That was the Bushmaster. Here is the Palmetto State Armory EPT trigger with the nickel coating, and that, wow, that is smooth. See how that pops right back? Nice and crisp trigger. Yeah, I like that. All right. Yeah, so anyhow, that's basically what I have for you guys. Just remember that loose is fast, brakes only slow you down, and a little bit of elbow grease can save you from having to spend $240 on a trigger. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but you can also just put a little bit of time into your mil-spec triggers, and maybe you don't have to spend all that money. So anyhow, remember, be safe, have fun on the range, and we'll see you next time.